Thank you, Peter, and thank you, Professor Baker, for hosting us here at the Ravensbourne facility. I am always amazed of how much interactivity can happen, how much media and creation can take place if you build the right space for it. I recently went to a high school in Palo Alto, right outside of Stanford, and they were able to raise a bunch of money and opened up a new media center for their high school, some 30,000 square feet of creative space for kids in grade 10, 11, 12, doing journalism, doing media, broadcast, green screen, broadcast rooms, and an environment that just engages students in new ways that we haven't seen enough of. One item here on this beautiful image that Peter referenced earlier, this was a commissioned artwork for Adobe Education Identity System. We're always looking to work with students to figure out how to express what we do from a marketing perspective and how we utilize these images in marketing campaigns and other events. This one is by Shinjaku Iwatashi, a graphic design student at Central St. Martin's University of the Arts in London. And to him, education takes one from darkness to light, and I don't know, oh, we don't have the animation, but you may have seen it earlier. He took it from pencil and pen drawings into Photoshop and edited in colors, and then created both a still art piece and an elaborate animated version made of 1,200 layers and 550 frames. And we want to thank him specifically, and if he's not here, we'll send him greetings. Today I'm going to cover just a little bit of the trends that we see at Adobe. I personally live in San Francisco. I was born and raised in Hamburg, Germany, but left to the United States. I came through the Macromedia acquisition and was originally responsible for the primary and secondary education market, and then moved on to graduate and now work in the higher ed space. And I'm here to learn as much from you as you're hoping to gain from today. We had some images in a prior presentation that were about St. Peter's space for the papal inauguration. I decided that I didn't want any religious images, so we took the soccer image from 2006. This is the final game between Italy and France in 2006, and Facebook was just coming out of its own space. It was only available to students at the time and didn't open to the public until later that year. YouTube was still private. It wasn't sold to Google until in September of 2006 that year. And the iPhone hadn't launched yet. Steve Jobs didn't announce the first version of the iPhone until 2007. And in just short 8 years, the landscape has changed absolutely dramatically. I don't think I have witnessed in my lifetime a change so dramatic when it comes to technology. We now have 1.3 billion users on Facebook. We have over 6 billion hours of video watched on YouTube every month, almost an hour for every person on this planet. And we have over 1.75 billion cell phones and mobile phones sold in the market. So a transition and a change that has moved us all into whole new worlds of digital communication, content creation, distribution, etc. Just a separate note, and I'm trying to find some European numbers. This was a research study from June 2014 about the penetration of cell phones in the business, in the market, and it looks like while the Nordics were a little bit ahead of the UK, by the end of next year we're looking at over 50% of the market having access to smartphones. And that was obviously not something people anticipated in this short period. So what are the main three changes in the market? We're looking at mobile, social, cloud. We're looking at global communication, really a tectonic shift that forever changes how we consume content, how we create content, and how we share information. In the last 5 years, we've seen a tremendous growth in consumption, connectivity, 1.5x connected humans on the planet. I think we're over 40% connected now. Social networking increased by tenfold. And interestingly enough, obviously with the purchase of so many smartphones, mobile web browsing is increasing rapidly, app downloads, and lastly, while that's not a brand new development, but the cloud storage and the move to cloud is happening ever more rapidly. And as Robin mentioned just now for Ravensbourne, also it's taking away the large servers and moving content to the cloud. When we look at technology adoption over history, we've seen some technologies take 40 to 50 years to develop, and in the last few years, things are happening slightly faster. When it took 50 years for electricity to reach 90% adoption, and this is for US households in particular, it took a whole lot less time for the PC to reach that market, the internet connectivity, and now HD TV, smartphones, tablets are on a trajectory not seen in the adoption of technology before. But a lot of it is noise, and it causes discontent and ADHD. We can't concentrate on any one particular subject any longer. Walking through London and seeing so many people on their phones, I bumped into at least 2 people this morning on the tube who weren't looking up. They were actually walking towards the station and looking at their phone and not at people around them. A lot of noise to deal with. But a lot of good things have happened. We can now rate our gym instructors. We can talk to professors. We can post homework online. We can publish a lot of different environments that have helped make our lives easier. I came to London with my cell phone and was able to find my way around on the tube and trying to get to restaurants in different places because I had that connectivity, obviously something that wasn't available just a short while ago. But for creatives and for content developers, this is starting to become more and more difficult as we're seeing lots and lots of different sizes, processing speeds, operating systems. This is just the lineup from Apple, from iPhone 4 through 6, the newer versions, Mini and the iPad Air. But when you add Android and other platforms, it's becoming increasingly difficult to figure out how to publish, how to create responsive design, and how to get your content on all of these different devices. This is not actual sizes, but it's sort of a representation of what we have to deal with processing speeds, operating systems, and all of the different devices. So what it drives towards is meeting expectations, meeting the expectations of your students, meeting the expectations of your customers, and those of the people you design for. This is an interesting piece out of a magazine I took a photo of this weekend. There's a new magazine called California Sunday. It's brand new to the market. It's a group of editors and filmmakers and creatives who want to tell stories in new ways. And the very first thing they do is they say, we need to create these stories in a way that everybody can access them. It's about getting to the people the way they want to consume that content, whether it's a phone, a tablet, your laptop, TV, any other way. They basically are launching their new publishing platform with all of that in mind. But what happens when things become commodities? Mobile, social, cloud, all of this is being developed rapidly. Adoption is very quick. Just on the conversation around storage, Microsoft recently announced that if you have an Office 365 account, we'll give you unlimited storage as part of it. If you are a Google Apps for Education user, we'll give you a terabyte of storage. Basically, storage is no longer anything of value. It's given away. It's expected to be part of what we do. Commodities of the next decade. And so we need to figure out what is the next paradigm. What do we do when all of that becomes cheaper and cheaper and easier to access? The new frontier is really experience. And Adobe would like to be at the center of that experience and the ability to develop experiences around the digital landscape. Experience is multifaceted. The brand is not just a logo. Design is not just an app interface. A campaign doesn't just stand on its own. So all of you, many of you here in the room who work in the creative field are becoming more and more important as the industry moves forward. The creatives are no longer at the end of a process, somewhere in the basement creating content, but they're becoming the strategists, the decision makers, and the leaders all the way up to Fortune 500 companies that are choosing a design-led process for the next innovation. There's some companies that I just wanted to highlight, and there's many, many more. These are just some of the few that come to mind very quickly. Spotify, Wired, Nest, Airbnb, and SoundCloud. Uber would be another one. Companies that are innovating with design, that are innovating with disruptive technology, looking at ways for us to consume and distribute content, and looking at it in different ways, and trying to approach the market and the customer with new and engaging ways that allows them to get excited. I don't think I would have ever thought that somebody could sell me a thermostat and I would be excited about the design and the usefulness. I think last week I talked to a colleague of mine who was flying home, and she said, I'm so in love with my Nest. I fly home, and when I get to the airport, I turn on my heater, and by the time I get home, it's a balmy 20 degrees Celsius. That wasn't, I don't think that was on anybody's plan, but it's companies that create design and use design to innovate and develop new ways to succeed in the business. So in this new era of digital, it demands that business reshape how they communicate and produce content with creativity at its core. We've seen the change in publishing, and Adobe has been at the forefront of trying to help companies change the print publishing world to a digital world. Some of you may be familiar with Adobe's digital publishing suite. We started that process with Wired magazine. We worked with Martha Stewart Living and other companies around the ability to drive content development from InDesign out to tablets, phones, different operating systems. And I believe in the US now, over 70% of the major publishers are using the digital publishing suite to get their content out to all these devices. We've seen the change in commerce, marketing, enterprise. It really has no end. And hopefully we'll see some of this happening in the education world as well. Adobe did recently, and I don't know if some of you have seen the studies that we've done, recently did a creativity study with Forrester Consulting and asked people in business of how they see the relationship of creativity within their businesses and the success that their business drive. In this case, 82% of companies believe that there's a very, very strong connection between creativity and business results. And when they talk about business results, it's about employee attraction and retention. It is about greater revenue. More companies that foster creativity achieved 10% or greater revenue than their peers by 3.5 to 1. Companies who were surveyed ranked highly for fostering creativity. 70% of them received award and recognition for best places to work. Obviously something that companies look forward to getting higher ranked in order to attract new talent. We also surveyed some recruiters. This is a study done in the US with about 1,000 recruiters in recruiting agencies and within large companies, trying to find out what kind of skills they're looking for as they're looking for new talent. 5 to 1 expressed that creative skills are preferred over conventional skills. 94% of hiring managers agree creativity is a key when evaluating new candidates for jobs. And I've seen at Adobe, very frequently we hire people on incredibly talented resumes. Everything looks fantastic. We usually fire them because they didn't have critical thinking skills, they didn't have collaboration skills, they're not able to work in teamworks, in groups. 82% of hiring managers seek well-rounded candidates who can creatively apply core skills to a range of business and technical problems. It is no longer just a single skill. We have to broaden our capabilities, and creativity plays a large role in that. When they were asking what the essential skills for new hires are, first and foremost, tech savviness. I do speak in front of a lot of K through 12 organizations, districts, and schools, In the old days, tech savviness meant you needed to know how to turn on the computer, figure out how to connect the printer, install drivers. Office used to be a great thing to add on your resume at the bottom. That's no longer sufficient. We need people with data visualization skills. We need people with analytical skills. And communicating through digital and visual media is becoming more and more important. And lastly, 76% of those asked indicated that creativity was key for new hire. So the benefits of digital literacy, and I don't think I have to explain this to most of you here in this room. You probably deal with this on a daily basis as you're educating the next generation of students. Storytelling, creativity, critical thinking, problem solving are all the skills that we're looking for when we're looking to the next generation of students that will be entering jobs that we don't even know what they're going to look like. 65% of schools, of kids today will end up in jobs that have not yet been invented. I talked to a teacher a couple of years ago who said that she felt like she was educating her students to compete in the Olympics, except she wasn't sure what sport they were going to compete in. And that I hear that very frequently, is that we have to create these skills, we have to teach and educate our students for something that we don't know what it's going to look like. And if you remember the change we've just seen in the last 8 years, we have no idea what the next 10 or 20 years will bring. Career paths are no longer linear. I don't think I have to talk much about this part. For me personally, I had a very non-linear work path. I grew up in Hamburg, Germany, studied English and American literature, went into acting, left to go to the US because I fell madly in love, ended up working in arts administration, moved into marketing, moved into high tech, and have been in high tech in the last 14 years. But I wouldn't have been able to do all these things without some very basic skills and some creativity underlying. When we asked those hiring managers whether they felt that if students were ready for today's dynamic workforce, 7 out of 10 said students aren't ready. They need to retrain them. They need to bring them in for additional education, and that's disconcerting. If we think, and I think there was another study that said that 90% of university professors and college deans felt that they were doing everything they could to prepare students, but then the workforce folks are saying they're not. There's definitely a disconnect. We did some studies, and those of you who were at our event in Barcelona last year, these are some statistics of a study we did last year on the reasons why educators struggle to incorporate creativity in the classroom. And in the US, it was mostly around the system not valuing creativity and lack of resources. But interestingly enough, on the rest of the places we surveyed, people indicated that it wasn't their role to educate around creativity. It was some art teacher, some ceramics professor. It was not their job in math and science and language arts to talk about creativity. And we feel that creativity has to really be integrated across all these subject areas, and people have to work interdisciplinary. When they were asked what the top 3 most important steps were to promote and foster creativity, first and foremost, everybody talked about the curriculum. And then next in line are the tools to enable educators to teach creativity. So how do we support this transformation? What does Adobe do in this next step and in the next few years? For those of you who may not be as familiar with Adobe as a company, we are now, I believe, 12,000 employees in over 20 countries. We have numerous business units within the organization, and splitting our majority of the work around the creative space into the Marketing Cloud and the Creative Cloud. The Creative Cloud is all of our desktop applications, Photoshop, InDesign, Dreamweaver, Flash, you name it, and the Marketing Cloud came out of the acquisition of Omniture, a company out of Utah dealing with marketing analytics. We are now trying to tie all of these workflows together so that we can go from ideation, iteration, collaboration, all the way to content storage, asset management, out to publishing and distribution, And by using the marketing analytics, we can figure out what works, what do people read, what do they want to see, and bring that back into the content development stream. So really an end-to-end workflow for the business. In my case, my role is on the digital media side in the Creative Cloud. And for that part, I have a few announcements to make, and then I want to do a small demo that Tony has prepared. And don't want to bore you too long with this intro, but for some of you may have come to MAX, our annual creative conference in Los Angeles. Every year, Adobe brings together about 5,000 to 6,000 creatives in LA to talk about what's new, what's coming. And these were the announcements just made in October. We have new mobile apps, and I think we're going to see, Tony will show a few of them, the 3 new ones, especially on the capture side. We have a new creative SDK that finally left sort of the underground inside the company and is now in public beta, allowing you to utilize some of the technology Adobe provides through an SDK and to develop your own apps, leveraging the Creative Cloud power. We also are tying more and more together the cloud services of what's available in the cloud, from Typekit to Edge and other tools, and bringing everything together that creates your own personal creative profile. You'll be able to have content show up in Photoshop and Illustrator. I don't know, are we going to see any of the desktop apps, or are you going to show those later today? That's for later today. We announced Breakthrough in Touch. We're now enabling a touch interface environment on Microsoft Surface and other Windows 8 environments that actually recognize that you are in a touch environment and create an interface that allows you to interact more accurately with the applications. And then, as always, we update now on a regular basis all of our desktop applications. If you are a Creative Cloud member, and I'm not sure how many of you are, you'll get updates on a rolling basis. We used to update every 18 to 24 months, and we're now on a, I would say, every 2 or 3 months, something new is available through Creative Cloud, and you can always choose whether or not to deploy those. And then lastly, something that Adobe hasn't talked much about, we acquired a company called Behance. It's a community of creatives. There's about 4 million of them on the Behance network, and we're now leveraging that community and are making available talent search algorithms that recruiters can use who are looking for creative talent, who can go into Behance and actually find the people, the animators, the creatives and broadcast journalists who can pull that information through a search algorithm directly from within Behance. One more reason for all of you, either if you're a student yourself, to publish your content to Behance, or encourage your students to participate in that community. These are the new apps, and I don't think I'm going to go into detail here because I think I'm going to just switch to Tony, and Tony will give us a brief demo of the new touch apps.
Fantastic. Thank you. Yeah. Cheers. Thank you. Thank you. So I should be on screen. Fabulous. Thank you. Good morning. All right. So we earlier on this year we launched a few apps that are helping us to expedite the process of ideation, right? To get our ideas down in some form. And we recognize that these devices are no longer just about consumption. We want to be able to create on them. They've got really powerful processes, and we can utilize that. So these are the apps that we launched earlier on this year. Along the top there, Adobe Clip, sorry, that was new Adobe Clip, but a Draw and Line and so on, they came along earlier on. And then at Max, we launched 3 new capture apps, which enable us to feed in via our persistent creative profile to our workflow. So what I'm going to do is just very quickly, because I have like 5, 6, or 7 minutes to do this, just demonstrate a couple of those things. So things that I can make and create on the go. If I see something I like, I can capture it. But you might think, well, yeah, you could just capture it with your phone. But you need to capture it and for it to actually have utility, for you to be able to use it straight away, for it to be available to you immediately for you to use in your project. So I'll start out here with Adobe Brush. And this allows me to create brushes for 3 of our products. It allows me to create brushes for Adobe Sketch, which is one of our mobile sketching applications. Photoshop Sketch it was rebranded as at Max. It also allows me to create brushes for Illustrator and brushes for Photoshop directly from my tablet or phone. So I'm just going to go through that process fairly quickly. And just on the left-hand side here, I've got a small plus, so I can add a brush from there. And then it's going to ask me where I want to add that from. So I'm going to add from my camera. Then I'm just going to come down to the paper I've dropped on the stage just here. And I'm going to capture this image like so. If I just get that to focus, there we go. So now I've caught that, I can move that across into the application. So I'll just hit the tick there and pass that, and then I can determine which application from here I can make that ready for. So I'll actually make this one ready for Sketch, like so. They've all got slightly different brush engines. They work in a slightly different way. So I'll make this one ready for Sketch, and then I can go for Type, just here, and it can do me 2 different types of brush. It can create me a ribbon, which is the thing stretched along and joined together, as you can see going along at the top there, or a scatter brush, where it will just scatter that mark around. So I'm going to leave it set at that. I'm going to go for the angle, just here, and then determine the brushing angle. So with none, it's just at the capture rate. If I change it to directional, if I then draw on this side here, you'll see how it's following along with the trajectory of the path. It's being modified in that way. Or I can, if I just clear that, I'm going to go for initial, and it will then take the initial direction and repeat that like so. So remember, these are all quite powerful controls, really, and I'm doing this in moments while I'm talking to you. It's an amazing little piece of kit. If I move on to crop from there, this is where I can actually modify the image that I've captured. So I can change the crop to capture just the bits I want from there, and I can kind of move that around like so. Okay, so once I've got the part of the image that I'm actually after, I can then go and refine that. So that's another control down along the bottom here. And then I can change the amount of white masking. And I can actually also brush on this to remove elements that I maybe don't want. So I can just do that like so. Then move into the settings for the brush itself. And this is essentially where I get all the fine control about how this is actually going to work. So I can change the initial size of the brush, just there like so. And I can change the minimum size if it's going to be pressure sensitive. Then I can go for pressure and determine what it will be affected by, whether it's its size, its opacity, or both of those things. My finger isn't, well, my finger is pressure sensitive, but not relating to the tablet, so it's not going to have that much effect just there. But if I was using something like our ink device or one of the pens from Adobe and so on, then it would work perfectly well. Then I can change the spacing, so I can bring the spacing down, like so, and also the amount of scattering. And you can see there I'm already getting quite an interesting mark just from that. And then I can change jitter, which is like a variation that we include in there. If you've ever made a brush inside of Photoshop, you'll know how that works just there. So I can change the size, the angle, and the flow all from there. And from that, then I've got a brush that I can use. If I want to check it out with a different color, then I can do that. And once I'm happy with it, all I have to do is give it a name, like so. So I'll just call it Ravensbourne, just there, because that way I'll know where I made it, and just save it. And there you go. That's available not just here, but it's available on all of my devices straight away. That just synchronizes with the cloud, and then it's available on here and anywhere else I'm using Sketch immediately. Or if it was going to Photoshop, it'd be available in Photoshop also. So I'm just going to come out of that application, and I'll go into color. So this was formerly known as Cooler in there. And what I can do is pick on something. So if I just pick on this wall graphic just here, now this is auto-generating me a theme at the moment, but if I tap, it will freeze the screen, and then I can move these things around, like so, and determine the color theme that I want to make from this. So that's all completely configurable. And once I've done with that, I can tap that through, like so, give it a name. So I'll just call this one RB, just there, and done. and then that will synchronize with the cloud, and that's available in Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign straight away, as well as with my other apps, and it's a part of my persistent creative profile. So that's color, and I can do more with that. I can move that out to the web and so on. And finally, I'll show you shape. So this allows me to quickly capture and modify vector shapes. Okay, so shapes that are completely resolution independent. So I've got something here that one of my colleagues drew, this little helicopter, just here, and I like it. So I'm just going to change the way, you can see I'm tapping a button on the right-hand side here, which allows me to capture either the in or outline from that. So I'm going to go with that, and then I've got this little threshold modulating slider on the side there. I'm just going to pump that right up like so. Hit the green tick, like that, or the green button. That moves that out like so, and then with my finger, I can just clean that up. So I'm just brushing around the sides here, removing those bits. If I made a mistake, like that, whoopsie, like so, I can then switch that back and add that back in, like so. Perfect. Once I've done that, a tick, and then this will evaluate it, and in just a few seconds that you're there, it's actually turned that into a vector shape. And that's immediately available inside of Photoshop and Illustrator for me to use in my artwork. And that's those 3 capture apps, and I think that's my 7 minutes up. So there we go. Okay, hope you like them and get to play with them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tony. I just want to finish out with a few additional items. If you're not aware of it, Adobe is frequently interviewing creatives, and we now have a site where we share those comments and conversations with creatives. I highly recommend checking this out, called Creative Voices. We have training videos, and we're adding new ones on a regular basis. And we're really starting to build out a library of content for beginners, intermediate, and advanced users for all of our applications. And then specifically in education, if you're not aware of it, if you are an educator and you're using our tools to teach, we have the Adobe Education Exchange. This is now a membership of over 160,000 educators in both primary, secondary, and post-secondary education, and includes lesson plans, training resources. There is synchronous and asynchronous professional development capabilities. There are discussion groups, and really an enormous amount of resource. Unfortunately, it's only available in English at this time, but we're looking at localizing that in other languages as well. This is the professional development part of that. There is ongoing training, ability to join trainings already in progress, and definitely a great way to expand your own knowledge and look at what other educators are doing. About, I would say, 7 or 8 years ago, Macromedia embarked on the development of some curriculum. They actually thought that they could make money by selling curriculum, and very quickly realized that that was not the way to go. So what they did instead is they offered the curriculum at no charge, and we have now I think it's 3 or 4 different lines of curriculum. Those are year-long curricula available under Creative Commons that you can use, change, edit, and amend for foundation of design for print production, web design, and film design and video production. Definitely highly recommend checking that out. If you're not aware of this, this is also available on the Adobe Education Exchange. Lastly, and I don't know if we have any here, if I can see if we have any Adobe education leaders in the room. Anybody standing up? No, not today. We have a group of education leaders, again, both in K through 12 and higher education, that we work with on an annual basis. They help us evaluate new products. There are beta programs that they can join. They also get access to all of our tool sets. And we have about 250 to 300 education leaders around the globe at this time. If this is of interest to any of you and your faculty, we'd love to hear from you. There's an application process that is sort of by invitation only. We don't have an open process, but it's a similar group than the Apple Distinguished Educator Program for some of you who may be familiar with them. Last couple of items, we have certification available. We partnered with Certiport. They were recently acquired by Pearson, and they offer both associate level certification and expert level certification. And some of you may either be certified yourselves or are about to be certified, so we appreciate your attention to this. And if you are if you are in education environments, take a look at this. This is a great way to give your students the ability to validate their entry-level skills or their expert-level skills as they enter the marketplace. And I think this is the end of my presentation. I want to thank you for being here, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the day. We want to partner with you. We want to learn from you.